In this video, I want to talk with you about rules of engagement as established by Christ. And I'm also going to illustrate for you how sin gets in when we don't stay in these rules of engagement. When we start to break away and we start to make excuses and we start to understand the experiences and the relationships in our lives based on what the world tells us. Matthew chapter 10, I'm going to start at verse 5. These 12 Jesus sent out with the following instructions. Do not go among the Gentiles or enter any town of the Samaritans. Go rather to the lost sheep of Israel. As you go, proclaim this message. The kingdom of heaven has come near. Heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse those who have leprosy, drive out demons. Freely you have received, freely give. Do not get any gold or silver or copper to take with you in your belts, no bag for the journey or extra shirt or sandals or a staff, for the worker is worth his keep. Whatever town or village you enter, search there for some worthy person and stay at their house until you leave. As you enter the home, give it your greeting. If the home is deserving, let your peace rest on it. If it is not, let your peace return to you. If anyone will not welcome you or listen to your words, leave that home or town and shake the dust off your feet. Truly, I tell you, it will be more bearable for Sodom and Gomorrah on the day of judgment than for that town. So the rule is, if the home is deserving, we are a house, so we are a home. If the home is deserving, let your peace rest on it. If it is not, let your peace return to you. That's what we're going to be focusing on in this video. Yesterday, I was approached by someone who decided to accuse me of something rather than trying to understand what the situation was. They stewed on believing that I had not responded to them, that I had somehow ducked out of a conversation that we were having. And I actually don't believe that to be true at all. I don't know where that is. I, can't find the conversation that I supposedly ducked out of. But regardless of what the situation is, I'm a human being. I can make mistakes. And that doesn't necessarily mean if I haven't responded that I wasn't intending to respond. But this person made up a whole story in their head about why it was that I didn't respond and started to impose motives on me that were not true. They were accusing me. Now, here's the thing. We know the spirit behind accusation. We know that right off the bat. So if we are then reproving that person and saying, hey, that's not actually what happened, and I also don't like the way that you're coming at me. It's not okay for you to accuse me. You don't know what's going on in my head or heart. Moreover, I'm doing all of this for free. When did you become entitled to that? To my time, to my response, to my teaching? When did that become an entitlement? Now, if you've listened to the channel for a while, or you've even posted comments. Usually if someone posts a comment and they do it with respect, I'll actually make them a whole video on whatever they're asking me about. I have been incredibly generous with my time and my resources. My time is money just like everybody else's time. But as it is, I don't get paid to do what I'm doing with you. So here's the reason I'm going into this explanation about this. We absolutely have to discern the spirit. We have to test the spirit in the other person. And the way to test the spirit is not to respond with the same kind of accusation, but to say, hey, I don't like what you're doing right now, and give them an opportunity to correct themselves. If they don't correct themselves, you have to understand that the Spirit of God is not in them. If you've handled things correctly and by God, and they don't respond in kind, the Spirit in you is not convicting the Spirit in them, because the Spirit in them is different from the Spirit in you. If they continue with that same accusation and defensiveness and making excuses for themselves and trying to get you to accommodate to them, and you find that you are working harder than them, where is your peace going? If the home is deserving, let your peace rest on it. If it is not, let your peace return to you. And very interestingly, God provided me with a couple of situations like this yesterday. Actually, I think 3 situations like this yesterday. So I knew he was teaching me something. Now, here's the thing. In the world, we've been taught to make a lot of excuses for people. But the Bible very clearly says, test the spirit in the person. You test the spirit by reproving them and giving them an opportunity to show you what is in them. If they do not respond in kind, if they are not able to examine themselves and be accountable and have a conversation that comes from the Spirit of God, the Spirit of God just might not be in them. And what's going to happen if you continue to feed into that and make excuses for them is that now you're operating in your own self-will. You're not recognizing where you need to work, where it is that you need to invest your energy and time. And you're not following what Christ said right here. And here's what happens is that your peace, you just gave your peace away. Now you start to get pulled back into the flesh. You start getting confused and trying to figure out what's the right way to do this. And you're trying to figure that out, not by the Spirit of God, but in your carnality. What's the right thing to do here? I want to do the right thing, but I'm confused. And what has happened is that messy spirit that's in that person is now infecting you because you didn't follow the advice that Christ gave in his word. You got to test the spirit. Now, I want to tell you how this happens with little children with a similar example, because you need to understand how certain things happened when you were a child and how that ended up leading to sin and how it leads to sin in your life today and why it is that you have to heal that stuff. Otherwise, you're going to keep acting it out. Children have a genuine, authentic, and precious desire to serve, to make you proud, to be helpful. And likewise, God's servants also have that genuine childlike desire because they've learned how to become like children. Now, when a child is trying to be helpful and they're living this goodness out, this part of God that is inherent in every child, and the adults around them just start to obliterate and sucker punch them, placing demands that they can't meet, putting them down, telling them they're not good enough or implying that they're not good enough, accusing them, their spirit begins to break. They lose their peace and they don't have confidence for what is good and what is of God. They start to lose their confidence in what they fundamentally, inherently know to be good from God. They start to get into their flesh. They start to feel like a failure. They start to feel intense grief. And they may even feel some outrage, which usually a child is not capable of expressing or articulating. They end up turning that inward and hating themselves. And because they don't know how to contend with their own grief and their own outrage that they're being mistreated, that they're being treated in a way that they don't deserve, that they're being accused for being someone who they're not, guess what happens? They start to get pulled into the flesh where Satan is sucker punching them all the more. And what happens to them internally? For any of you who've ever been through this as a child, what happens internally? You start to ruminate, you start to hate yourself, you start to hate others, and you want to give up. You want to give up on doing what's good because you just keep getting beat up for doing what's good. That's not the will of God. There's no shortage of evil on this earth. So you have to understand that that is going to happen. It's not something that might happen or rarely happens or only happens in given situations. It's going to happen repeatedly, especially if you're in God and especially if you're serving him. Now today, a similar thing happened in me. Although I know better, my confidence is in God, but I started to get pulled a little into the flesh. And here's where the sin starts happening. Now I'm ticked off. Now I'm confused. My spirit wants to do the right thing, but my flesh is really upset because I know I'm being unfairly accused. I know I'm being misrepresented, and I know that that person is being entitled to something that I have no obligation to give them. I do this strictly out of my obligation to God. So now I'm going, what's the right thing to do? I don't want to just cut someone off if they're going to, if they need to hear the message. And then God begins to tell me, I'm the one who gives them the ears to hear. I'm the one who gives them the eyes to see. I'm the one who gives them the heart to understand. What have I taught you? So I want to demonstrate for you, when someone is not receiving the message or you have tested the spirit and they're still coming at you with this spirit of Satan and these tactics of Satan to accuse you, if you don't dust your feet, if you don't take your peace back and remove yourself from that situation, it's going to lead to sin. You're going to want to curse that person. You are not going to feel love towards them. And your peace is going to be stolen because that is the goal of the spirit that's operating in them. To confuse, to create chaos, to accuse. Now, can you see how not understanding this as a child, not understanding how to test the spirit, how that could lead to so many years of satanic abuse through people, how that could then break the spirit of a child who actually wants to do good, who truly wants to serve, who truly wants you to be proud of them. They want to please you, but that would break their spirit. That would cause them to lose God's spirit of peace because now they're being jacked up in the flesh to perform and prove themselves and be confused and all of these other things that the enemy triggers. God's instruction is so simple. It is so simple. Sometimes it's not easy, but it is simple. And so if you remember his instruction, you're going to know what to do when these situations happen. And I'm going to tell you something else. He will help you in those situations to know what to do. He will remind you, what have I taught you? He will remind you what's in my word. If the home is deserving, let your peace rest on it. If it is not, let your peace return to you. So I want to tell you this. There's a couple reasons why this video is important. One, you need to understand how sin gets in when you're a kid. When you're a child, you don't know any better. And most of us adults don't even know any better. We just keep repeating the same darn mistakes. Don't let anyone steal your peace. Don't let anyone shake your confidence for what's good. You can do good, and God will contend. He will teach you how to continue to do good while protecting yourself from people like this, spirits like this. Stand up for yourself. Stand up for what's true. Give the person an opportunity to correct themselves. If they do not, you know the spirit that's operating in them. In that case, let your peace return to you and dust your feet. All of us are going to be in a situation at some point where we are ministering to others, where we're sharing the word, where God is activating our lampstands. So you need to know right now, even if that's not happening, this is something that is good, that you need to be building right now. First of all, it's going to preserve you. You don't want to be tossed to and fro by spirits like this. So it's going to preserve you and reduce your suffering. Secondly, when you are sharing the message, when you are poured out for free, no less, every single day, serving others, wanting to please your God, and someone comes at you like this, you're going to know exactly what to do. You're going to know exactly what God established and what he expects of you and what is needed in order to preserve what's good in you. And in this way, you will not be pulled back into the flesh. You will not become confused or discouraged. And no one is going to be able to successfully carry a satanic attack to you. And listen, if you fall into it a little bit, understand that God is building you in every single situation. I knew when I started to get upset about this and feel outraged and my grief became overwhelming, I knew what I needed to do. I sat down, I journaled, I brought it to God, I did my inner child work. Exactly everything that I have taught you. And God gave me an opportunity to then heal a little bit more from what I went through as a child. And right now I get to feel that redemptive love of my God, the redemption of reclaiming the goodness that was in me, of wanting to serve, of genuinely and authentically wanting to contribute good to others around me. It's not a bad thing, but we come to think of it as a bad thing because of how vulnerable it makes us if we don't understand when to dust our feet, how to identify who is even worthy of receiving that. Someone who comes to accuse is not worthy. Flat out. They are not worthy of anything you have to give them. Take your peace back and dust your feet. Thank you so much for listening. God bless you, and I'll see you in the next video.